they got the knowledge you crave. Hard hitting insight gonna make you win. Listen up closely, let the games begin. Top pick sleepers every week I spin. The FF universe here to help you win. The fantasy football universe.
What is up? Welcome into a ridiculously important Week 14 for your fantasy football playoff implications. I, of course, am Jeremy Shulman. This is the double FU, the FU times 2, the fantasy football universe. Thanks for stopping by and jumping in here. We're live for a complete hour here talking fantasy football. Start, sit, a couple of pieces of information before we begin. Of course, we got a Discord. I'm going to drop that in the chat in just a couple of minutes. You can jump in and join in if you'd like to get your questions answered outside of just this time. Also, if you haven't used Fast Draft, please do so. Promo code FFU. That's available for you. We got that first time deposit match. You see it there. Use a promo code and you're able to do that. Of course, we got this little thing as well. This is our QR code to head on over to TikTok. Jesse Moeller is over there right now. He's going to give you all of the insights that you need, but the chat gets a little busy over there. So if you get your questions answered over here, go on over there and check it out, and vice versa. Happy to answer any and every question you may have. We're going to start it off with a bit of news. There's 2 inactives that we need to be aware of. The first one is Parker Washington. He's kind of the big name. We do have Dyami Brown back, though. So Parker Washington out. He had been seeing the volume, but Dyami Brown being out kind of just helped consolidate the targets there in Jacksonville. Now, BTJ had a decent game last week. He's back. We know Jakobi Meyers is someone we're very happy with, elevating him in terms of his target share here. And then, of course, Brenton Strange, who in back-to-back weeks has gotten there as the tight end 5 on the week. Something interesting to consider. I do like him this week. He's my tight end 4 on the week. This was even before Parker Washington was ruled out. He had been questionable all week, but just ruled out recently. So I do like a lot of the Jags in this matchup here. Just to give you a sense, Brenton Strange for me is my highest ranked of these 3 guys. Against Indy, they're not really the coverage guys that you're concerned about. And of course, Sauce Gardner not playing in this game. Sauce hasn't been great all season, but also he's been a guy who, was a massive upgrade for whatever it was that Indy was rolling out previously in their defensive secondary. Now with him out for an extended period, we'll see how long, but certainly out for this game. That just means that there's going to be more and more chances for these Jacksonville Jaguar wide receivers to get over, or pass catchers, I'll say. So like I said, I do like Brenton Strange. In terms of the wide receiver situation, I got Jakobi Meyers as a mid-range wide receiver 2. He's at 17. I got Brian Thomas Jr. down at 22, so he's a back-end wide receiver 2. I can easily see Jakobi Meyers out-targeting and out-producing Brian Thomas in this game. He just looked like even more of a seamless transition into this Liam Cohen offense. They went out and seemingly got him with a purpose in mind of how to use him. He's the type of guy they use, and there's an immediate rapport there. Whatever's going on with Brian Thomas Jr. Throughout the course of this season, even stemming back to the offseason, whether it's integration issue, an attitude issue, an effort issue, an injury issue, I don't really know. But I do know that Jakobi Meyers is the guy that I want to trust in this case over Brian Thomas Jr. at the wide receiver position. In fact, I'll go as far as to say it's Jakobi, then Brenton Strange, then Brian Thomas Jr. for me, but they're all right there. And I think you can play all of them against Indy this week. Both of the running backs have the potential and could go off as well. But what I think is nice is that even with Daniel Jones hobbled, we can see a world. And even with a good Jacksonville defense, we can see a world where Indianapolis can put up points, and Jacksonville offense has to keep pace. The other one here is Tristan Wirfs. He's an interesting one. Of course, we knew that this was likely to be the case, but Baker Mayfield's blindside protector And it just all around great offensive lineman is officially out for this game. So because that's the fact that of life really that we have to deal with here, it's a little bit of a downgrade. It's not that much, but and I'm not too upset about Bucky Irving's prospects here. But when you think about the wide receivers who were always a little bit iffy to begin with, we got Emeka Egbuka. We've got, who do we have? Chris Godwin. These are guys we were happy enough to play. And even so, I have them both hovering right around that wide receiver 2-3 borderline. Currently, I have Emeka at 25. I currently have Chris Godwin at 30. So those guys are right there. At the same time, Bucky not so worried. It's not helpful. But at the same time, it's a bit of a downgrade. And Cam Jordan, we see him since the Indianapolis bye racking up the sacks and the pressures. If there's one thing that the New Orleans defense can do, it's that front can get after the quarterback a little bit. Now, overall, they're decent. They're a decent defense, but they're not anything special. A healthy Baker with a healthy, functional offense should do well against this New Orleans defense. We're not exactly at 100% in Tampa, especially with Tristan Wirfs down. All right. But let's talk about this. Frosty, what is up? Thanks for joining. What do we think about Luther Burden? This is a great question. Look, I'm going to look up the stats here on Luther Burden, but I'm not buying the Luther Burden breakout game, necessarily speaking. It's just been so bad for Luther Burden here. Let me pull up the stats. Let's see. Let's go half PPR because that's where our rankings are. Look, I get it. Rome Odunze is out. Makes a ton of sense to assume that it's going to be Luther Burden. We did have a Luther Burden game earlier in the season, right? He went off. He had some of those design screens. It looked like the breakout was coming. But that was all the way back in week 3 against Dallas, and how we know how down bad Dallas was early in the season on defense. They've resurrected themselves to become kind of an average defense at this point in the season. But even in that game where he was wide receiver 6 overall back in week 3, it was 3 targets, 3 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. So he broke a big one. It might have broken 2 big ones. I can't remember exactly back in the day. But since that game, he's only had 2 games over 50 yards receiving. He's only had 2 games with 4 catches. The rest were 3 and below. He's only had 1 game. It was last week against Philly, but 1 game with 6 targets. So this is kind of the concern. It's the usage for Luther Burden. He's going to have to kind of break a big one. Now against Green Bay, could that he do that? Yeah, it's possible. I'd like to see 6 targets again from Luther Burden. I'm not super confident with that. In fact, I think it's Colston Loveland who stands to benefit a little bit more than Luther Burden. DJ Moore is often utilized, but Caleb Williams is the least efficient passer in the league. He's the least accurate starting quarterback in the league. So do I think Burden will do anything that really matters? No. Since that week 3 game against Dallas where he was wide receiver 6, here are his wide receiver finishes: 110, 36, 78, 93, 41, 57, 35, and 47. He's not someone I'm trying to plug into my lineups. I know we got 4 buys. I know maybe you might be forced into a corner, and you can do that and pray. But yeah, I think it's more of a Colston Loveland. I think Cole Kmet gets more involved. But really, this run game for Chicago has been dominant. That offensive line is built to run the football. Swift and Monangai have been very good at navigating the holes there and being patient. And they're kind of hiding Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson came out and said it earlier this week, Frosty, how the passing game needs to, they're winning in spite of their passing game. I believe those were his words. And they really need to get better on that end. So that's really the concern here, is this passing game. Yeah, Burden should be a decent play, but he hasn't been so far this season. With Rome out, I'm not looking to Burden. I'm looking elsewhere. Frosty also says, play Burden, Mooney, Reed, or Mitchell. Well, here you go. I'm playing Adonai Mitchell pretty clearly here. Burden, once again, the usage isn't there for me. Like I said, he's been at best over the last 6 weeks, the wide receiver 35, and just did that once. He did it twice in the last 7 weeks. He's wide receiver 36 and 35. So Burden is a no for me. Mooney, is hot and cold. I think it's more Kyle Pitts because Mooney's going to be on the outside dealing with that Seattle Seahawks corners and safeties. Julian Love and I think Jaron Reed as well are back this week for the Seattle defense. So a good defense gets even better. And it's Kirk Cousins, man. So for me, Mooney, he should be a really good wide receiver. I don't know if it's injury. I don't know if it's ineffectiveness or scheme or what it is, but Mooney just hasn't been seeing the consistent, reliable targets that we would expect. Seattle's really poor against the tight end. This should be a Kyle Pitts game, all things considered. And Jaden Reed, it's just too early. We don't know. Jordan Love's playing well. Christian Watson's playing well. This offense moving the football. I don't mind the matchup here against Chicago. In fact, I think they're going to have to try and keep up with Chicago scoring that run game. But could I see that be through Josh Jacobs? I really could. Jaden Reed probably has a Zay Flowers game, but this is the problem with these wide receivers, Frosty, is they're not utilized in the red zone. Who are you going to throw to if you're Jordan Love? Are you going to throw to in the red zone? Are you going to throw to Luke Musgrave, a gigantic tight end target? Are you going to throw to Christian Watson, 6'4", on the outside? I know Jalen Johnson's back. I know Kyler Gordon's back. But you're going to prefer these guys, and these NFL quarterbacks have proven it. Jaden Reed doesn't get utilized around the goal line. When he scores, he breaks a big one. So I'm going Adonai Mitchell. He's basically the only game in town in New York. They have a decent matchup today, of course, against the Miami Dolphins. And he's scored in his last game 12 targets, 8 for 102 and 1 last week against Atlanta. But the previous 2 weeks, which is what I like to see, 6 targets and 7 targets, didn't necessarily come through because what's his name? It's Mechie. Mechie has been scoring as well, but I do prefer Adonai Mitchell to these guys this week. There's just too much uncertainty. I want to play the matchup in that case. Kyle Pitts over all of them, I would. Against Seattle, it's so tough to trust Pitts. I get it. But Seattle has been giving up fantasy points to the tight end because they're not really giving it up anywhere else. Let me get the exact numbers for you. I got the wrong side. So they're giving up the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends, but the 20th most to quarterbacks, the 28th most, right? So this is good for their defense. To running backs, the 24th most to the wide receiver position. So where you get over on Seattle is at the tight end position. Now, Julian Love is back. So maybe this changes things a little bit for them, but Kyle Cott has been decent, in as his replacement. I still go Kyle Pitts over them, but I would go Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell in a pinch. Ronnie, good morning. Thanks for sticking in. Needs one of Burrow, Love, JD5, or Darnold. I get it. Let's take a look at the quarterback rankings here. All right. Of course. So Jordan Love's been playing really well his last couple of weeks. It's really coincided with the return and emergence of Christian Watson. This passing game has really come alive, and it would be so much nicer and so much better for him if Tucker Kraft were able to come back. But in 2 of the last 3 weeks, Jordan Love has been at quarterback 1, QB 8, then 26, then QB 2 in the last 3 weeks. Now, that was the Giants in Detroit, but Chicago has not been a lights-out pass defense. Again, those 2 corners are back, so it makes things a little bit more difficult. But Jordan Love has played well, and he's throwing touchdowns, so we like that. Jordan Love is my QB 9 this week. Now, Jaden Daniels, I'm going to exercise a little caution with him this week. I have him at QB 10 right behind Love. At Minnesota, we know Brian Flores has the ability to blitz and disrupt an offense. This offense is not necessarily a good one, but Terry McLaurin has looked exceptional. The problem is Jaden Daniels 100% healthy? Are they going to be able to, have some sort of functional run game to balance out this pass game? I don't really think so. I think this is more of a Flores game than anything else. And we know those 3 linebackers are elite, or really have been. That's Eric Wilson, that's Brian Cashman, and Van Ginkel. No, Van Ginkel's in Detroit now. There's another one. Can't think of him, outside guy. But yeah, the 3 of them together have really come together to kind of balance this defense in Minnesota. So I don't love Daniels. I think they'll also spy him. And then Darnold, he had a down game last week, so I get it. But against Atlanta, who's been hasn't been as good of a defense as they typically were in the beginning of the season, I do have him down at QB 15. There's a bit of a pass rush. You got Brandon Dorlus, who's out though, a couple of injuries on that defensive line. So Darnold is the lowest of this group, but it's Joe Burrow, man. I mean, I know I kind of slow played you here in this one, Ronnie, but it's clearly Joe Burrow for me. He's my QB3. I have him even above Matt Stafford this week against Buffalo. I think Cincinnati does whatever the hell they want to them. You can run against Buffalo for sure. I think Chase Brown and Samaje Perine are get involved, but they can get there on the ground or through the air, which helps Burrow, of course. He's got those two elite weapons with T. Higgins back. And of course, all of his tight ends are healthy. He's got Gesicki. He's got Fant. He's got Yoshivas if he needs to rely on him. So it's Joe Burrow by a ton for me. And I don't really even see someone like Jaden Daniels, who has that rushing upside, really even threatening him this week. Go Burrow. Be happy with it. I don't think there's any cause for concern. Look, Tron, week 14, I get it. You want to make sure that you are playing the right guys. It's tricky, especially because Chris Olave has been injured all week with back spasms, but will play. So in full PPR, what do we do? Need two more wide receivers. So starting Nico is the right idea. I think you need to. I mean, Houston, we never know what to expect. We never know how much pressure CJ Stroud or Davis Mills or whoever, but it is Stroud this week. We never know how much pressure they're going to be under and how that's going to impact the downfield passing game. Sometimes it's even a Dalton Schultz game, depending on how the coverage leans. In Kansas City, even with Nico facing off against Trent McDuffie, who looked human when he faced up against CeeDee Lamb last week. Nico Collins is not a CeeDee Lamb level wide receiver, but he's close. So I think he can get over on Trent McDuffie, and he's a really good contested catch wide receiver. So starting Nico's the right play. Again, he's my wide receiver 9. So now we have the question of whether we're going Olave, Devonta Smith, McLaurin, and Debo. Look, Devonta Smith, I can't do it with him, and I'm going to tell you why using some of his numbers. But we know there's issues with Jalen Hurts and his downfield passing. That's been the case all season. It's opened up a little bit more lately, but listen to this, who they played. They played Detroit, Dallas, and Chicago, the last couple of weeks. So Devonta Smith, his targets are nice to see, but the problem is if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's only had 3 in the season. You're not really happy with his day. In fact, only once this season has Devonta Smith been a wide receiver 1. He's been a wide receiver 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So that's nice. He's a nice kind of wide receiver play because he can be a wide receiver 2 pretty nicely. But against the Chargers, I'm just kind of expecting this to be more of a lower scoring game. This could be a Saquon Barkley type game. Marion Hampton's back. We know the Chargers are going to want to slow play things because they want to protect Justin Herbert and his broken hand that he just had surgery on. He's going to play. It's also an island game on Monday night. So that's another consideration here. Can Devonta Smith break one? Any game. He's a stud. But the problem is he isn't used in this offense in that fashion necessarily. When he breaks one, it's usually a long slant. It's not necessarily your Deshaun Jackson deep burner. So, and Jalen Hurts can't necessarily get it to him if it is. I'm going Terry McLaurin in this case. I know he's got a difficult outside matchup assignment, and Deebo Samuel should be open under the middle a little bit more as a result. But Minnesota doesn't necessarily scare me in terms of their man-to-man one-on-one coverage on the outside. It's more that I think Terry McLaurin gets bracketed, that the safeties are really kind of leaning his way because he's been phenomenal. I just don't think it matters. I think he's healthy. I think Jaden Daniels has the ability to get him the ball. He's a wide receiver 9 last week. When he came back in the middle of the season for that one game in Kansas City and played half the snaps, he was a wide receiver 16. Terry McLaurin still has it. He's proving he still has it, and he's getting in the end zone. But last week against Denver, of all teams, against Pat Surtain a lot of the times, 14 targets, 7 for 96, and a score. Minnesota is a much easier matchup for him. I'm rolling with McLaurin, and I'm rolling Olave. Olave was my wide receiver 8 on the week. I had to bump him down simply just because of the injury, but I couldn't get him further than wide receiver 11. He's above Ladd McConkey for me. He's above Jalen Waddle and Justin Jefferson in phenomenal matchups. He's above Devonta Smith, who's wide receiver 15. I get it. It's maybe a little concerning to play him So you could play Devonta Smith over Chris Olave, but I'm very happy going Nico. I'm very happy going Terry McLaurin, who's even just a few spots below Devonta. I'm going to move him up above Devonta, so he's going to be my 15. Devonta is going to be my 16 because I do feel more comfortable playing McLaurin. So once again, Nico, I think that's the right call. I'll go Olave, McLaurin. Devonta's right there. If you're uncomfortable at all about Olave, I'm not. But if you are, you can play him. And Debo is last there, Tron. Jordan Love, what is up? PPR RB2. Neil Hampton Monunga. The tight end question I feel like is easier, so we're going to do that first. Juwan Johnson, great matchup. I love the volume that he sees. Great player. At Tampa, not afraid of this matchup at all. But it's Tyler Shough, right? So we're a little concerned about that. The only reason that this is easier for me is because Cincinnati, by far, in fact, I'm going to pull this up so I can show this to you to illustrate my point much more clearly. Fantasy points allowed here. So this is the fantasy. Let me throw it up on the screen. All right. This is the Fantasy Pros fantasy points allowed metric that tracks the fantasy points allowed at each position that defenses are doing. So let's, for example, take the Buffalo Bills. You see they're very good against quarterbacks, but not so good against running backs. You can run on this defense quite clearly. We have 13 weeks of data now at this point. But let's just click tight end and see, oh, wait, the Cincinnati Bengals are by far giving up the most points, not only to the running back position, but also to the tight end position. The reason they're good against wide receivers is because DJ Turner, but also Dak Hill are kind of locking down the outsides. You have to attack this defense in the middle. So you can run it up the gut. You can throw it down the middle and down the seams with these tight ends. And you see that quarterbacks are deciding to do that because they get over on this Bengals defense as well. But look at the next teams. Right? We go from 19 fantasy points per game to 13, 13, 13, 13, 12, 12. You see the norm, and then you see how far outside the norm the Bengals are. Let's look at other positions, right? This isn't the case. It's usually pretty lockstep. You can see the Cowboys and the Lions and the rest of these, right? You get a very good sense of how this data is useful. The Bengals and the Giants, and then maybe the Cowboys, but then you see it regress here. The Dallas Cowboys giving up the most, and then you see how it works. Look, the tight end position is just Cincinnati's given it up a ton, and Dalton Kincaid plays the Cincinnati Bengals. So for my money, look, I get maybe it's a health issue. Maybe we're not sure if Dalton Kincaid is clearly going to play many of the snaps, if he's going to get a ton of the tight end workload in the passing game. If you're concerned about that, I don't think Juwan Johnson's a bad play, right? And I'm trying to think if there's any other Johnson. I don't think it's Theo Johnson because I know he's not playing. But yeah, I can understand Juwan Johnson having the safer floor and wanting to feel safe. So if you're in a tight matchup, or even if you're projected to be well ahead and you just want the safe points at tight end, go Juwan Johnson and don't think twice about it. But Dalton Kincaid is in the best possible matchups for tight ends. If you think about what's going on, not only in terms of the linebacking core, but also the nickel corner in Cincinnati. You got two rookie linebackers who are athletic and can't cover anything in the middle of that Cincinnati defense. And then you got a nickel corner I've never heard of who's been in the league for 6 years. So, and we did this on yesterday's show, myself and Jesse Moeller. So it's clearly Dalton Kincaid for me. I think James Cook has a phenomenal day. He's my RB1 this week. But I also think Dalton Kincaid, who is my tight end 9, just ahead of Juwan Johnson in this matchup. Maybe he's a little bit limited, but if you ask me who's more likely to score a touchdown, I'd say Kincaid. As for the running backs, Jordan, we're going with Neil Hampton and Monunga as an RB2. Let's just pull up the rankings and see where we stand. I got Neil at 25 this week against Tampa. My concern with Devin Neal is that he's not really getting the goal line looks. Those are going to go to Taysom Hill for a large majority. Those are, Tyler Shough is going to try to run it in. He's going to try and throw it in to Juwan Johnson, to Chris Olave, who's been getting work in the red zone. If he doesn't score a touchdown, you're not happy. So right now I'm hedging my touchdown bet here. I would bet he doesn't over he does, but it's possible. But right now he's my RB25. I got Hampton RB23 in a tougher matchup. But if you ask me who was more likely to score the touchdown, I would go Hampton over over Neal. Now, Monangai is interesting. I have him one spot above Hampton, and you can run on these Green Bay Packers. So what I would assume is going to happen is that Swift and Monangai are going to have a similar game to what happened last week. And the Packers are really giving it up on the ground. Rico Dowdle had a massive game against them a few weeks ago. They've had injuries across their defensive front as well. So I'm just going to roll with Monangai here because he feels safe. I get wanting to start Hampton. I think he sees the volume, but with the state of that offensive line, that's what scares me off of him. And going up against Philly in the state of their defensive line. Now, I think Jalen Carter just had surgery, so that's something to keep in mind. In fact, I'm going to just double check that. Let me pull up Jalen Carter real quick so I can give you the exact information on him. Yeah, so he's not going to play. He's out. It's his shoulder. He underwent procedures on both of his shoulders this week. Won't play on Monday night. So that's really interesting for Omarion Hampton. And we know that the problem with this offensive line in Los Angeles is the tackles, right? Both of those all-star tackles went out. We brought in a third tackle. I think he was injured as well. So the interior of that line, Omarion Hampton running in the interior, should be viable play with Carter out. I'm still going to go Monangai. I think the split and the usage is too good. They're trying to hide Caleb. You can run on the Green Bay Packers, and this offensive line can run on pretty much anybody. That's why I have Monangai one spot above Hampton. So I will go Monangai. I will go Kincaid. If you want to feel safer at tight end, you can go Johnson, simply because we don't know the workload with Kincaid back. It seems like he's rushing back because the Bills want to try and make a push to try and make the playoffs. But I'll go Monangai, Kincaid there. Guys, over here on the QR code, if you haven't been over there, that's Jesse Moeller over on TikTok right now on the Fantasy Football Universe page, answering a ton of start-sit questions just like these. Feel free to check that out. We're trying to grow that channel along with this channel. So if you want to know when we're live, and on TikTok, it's pretty much every single day of the week, you can go ahead and head over there, follow us over there, and you'll see when we go live every single day. Many of the days when it's myself, it's 4 p.m. Eastern. When it's Jesse, he goes a little bit later and sometimes often does the pre-game for Monday night. And like right now, he's doing the pre-games for Sunday afternoon. Let's check in on a few interesting rankings this week as we await some further questions. At the quarterback position, Burrow at 3, Stafford at 4. We had Dak Prescott up at 2. That's feeling decent right now. I don't think he's going to get that high. We'll have a few other performances, but the matchups are too juicy. And of course, Josh Allen at 1 against Cincinnati. We just showed you what quarterbacks do against that team. This could be another Josh Allen 6-touchdown performance. It's very possible, but we love that for Joe Burrow in the same game trying to keep up. I think this is an old school, like 5 years ago shootout situation here, where in Buffalo, where they just need to do everything they can. And it's an early game. I kind of wish it was a later game, but it's an early game to consider. Jordan, give me 1 second and I'll get to your other question here. Just a couple of other QB notes. Got Lamar at 8. Really hard to push him down this week in a phenomenal matchup, getting healthier every single week, but we just haven't seen it with him. I think it's another good matchup for Mark Andrews. He's my tight end 6 this week. So I think Lamar feeds Mark Andrews. Isaiah Likely getting more involved was nice to see. But of course, you also love to see Zay Flowers kind of bounce back. I think he will in terms of a production standpoint. He doesn't score the touchdowns, so we don't love him for fantasy, but he's a viable flex play each and every week. He just had a dud of a game. And then you look at Bo Nix. He's in a great matchup, but quarterback 11. He was quarterback 25 against Vegas back in week 10. So that's something to consider. But you have to be able to kind of, suspend your judgment here because Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin and the rest of this offense are playing well. RJ Harvey is going to get a crap ton of work. Not enough work because Jaleel McLaughlin will be involved, but this offense is starting to feel itself a little bit more. I think they have a better performance than they did at home against Vegas a few weeks back. And then Sam Darnold, I don't expect him to bounce back against Atlanta. He certainly could, but it's JSN and nobody else over there for him, so he's my QB 15. Daniel Jones in a tough matchup, actually above him. In fact, Sam Darnold is the sandwich in the Jacksonville against Indy quarterback showdown. Daniel Jones at 14, Darnold 15, Trevor Lawrence at 16. In fact, I'm going to flip those. I'm going to put Trevor Lawrence at 14, and I'm going to put Daniel Jones at 16. Jacksonville has been the better defense. Daniel Jones still with that fracture that he's dealing with. So those are some interesting rankings for you at the quarterback position. Let's check out this other question. Wide receiver 2 and a flex. Who do we got? So we see the names here. At first glance, I really want to play Michael Wilson. In fact, I may have to move him up my rankings. He was wide receiver 18-ish. I'll double check that in a second. But with MHJ and Greg Dortch out, it's the Rams. That's the one concern that we have here in this game. But damn, he's looked so good when he's been the man. And we know Trey McBride is going to garner all the coverage, rightly so. And he's still my tight end 1. He's still going to score a touchdown this week because they're going to have to keep up with the Rams and all the touchdowns that they're going to score. Michael Pittman had a rough matchup against Derek Stingley last week. He's got another not so great matchup this week. So I faded Pittman in my rankings. In fact, I think it's the first week I put Alec Pierce over him. Maybe I didn't go that far, but they're definitely close in the rankings. DK Metcalf, good matchup, but really hard to trust, even with Roman Wilson out of this game. He's a tough one. And so the 3 guys I'm looking at here to pick from here, Jordan, are Watson, Wilson, and Sutton. So let's see where I have them ranked. I feel like you got to play Michael Wilson. The volume's just going to be there. Jacoby Brissett has been quarterback 1 every single week. Yeah, I have Michael Wilson at 19. I don't think I'm going to move him up because I got Jacoby Myers at 18. Love him this week. And Christian Watson, your boy, there at 17. Cortland Sutton down at 21. The thing with Cortland Sutton, and I'll give you the numbers on it, but like I mentioned back in week 10, that game between the Broncos and was Pat Surtain even available? He might have been out that game. But it was 10-7 where the Broncos barely won that game. I'm just going to type in Sutton, and I'll tell you what Sutton did. Bo Nix was the quarterback 25. But Cortland Sutton just did not show up. He was inexplicably the wide receiver 58, 4 targets, 3 for 24. And I'm not sure that Troy Franklin did much of anything. I think that could have been a J.K. Dobbins. It could have been a Troy Franklin touchdown, actually. But I'm not going to look into that right now. The point is that, Cortland Sutton scares me a little bit this week. Simply because he wasn't able to put it together the previous week. But even still, he against Washington can't cover anybody. Start every wide receiver you have against Washington. But he was the wide receiver 15 last week. But previous to that, he had the bye in week 12. And then before that, week 11, wide receiver 32. Then 58 in week 10 against the Vegas Raiders, like we just talked about. Week 9, wide receiver 30. Week 8, wide receiver 37. So, and that's even in week 9 with scoring a touchdown. He was still the wide receiver 30. So, Cortland Sutton for me is just not a guy I'm willing to bank on weekly. It's going to be Watson because he's been exceptional. It's going to be Wilson because he's going to be peppered with targets. And I feel pretty comfortable about those rankings of those 2. Pittman and Metcalf are much further down. Mr. McSauce, what is up? We need a flex. Brian Thomas Jr. or Zach Charbonnet? I like this question because it's really hard to rely on Brian Thomas Jr. He's proven that over the course of the entire season. And now Jacoby Myers is in town and soaking up all the targets, but Parker Washington is out. So the first question is where is Zach Charbonnet ranked? I got him at RB 34. Kenneth Walker has been seeing more volume, especially in the red zone, but Zach Charbonnet continues to dominate red zone work. It seemed like in the last couple of games, Seattle made an effort to say, okay, Kenneth Walker, you can have a few shots at the goal line. And he actually punched in 1 or 2 because maybe they felt bad for the guy doing all the work. But Zach Charbonnet is the guy they use down there. And this feels like a place where Zach Charbonnet can score potentially multiple times, but certainly once against an Atlanta front that's missing Brandon Dorlus and a couple of other key pieces at least hobbled here. Now, I can't push him up much higher than RB 33. I really like Samaje Perine this week. I like Bashal Tutins. potential. And I like Kamani Vidal in the passing game still with Amari and Hampton back. I'm not sure how exactly that's going to shake out. So I'm going to leave Zach Charbonnet at 33 because the potential is there that he doesn't score. And of course, if he doesn't, you're not happy. But Brian Thomas came back last week, was utilized on 75% of snaps, and was just a wide receiver 61, 3 targets, 2 for 28, and he didn't get the score. In fact, Brian Thomas has only been a wide receiver 1 once this season. It was back in week 6, oddly, against Seattle. He was 8 for 90 on 10 targets with a touchdown. He hasn't even sniffed that level of production in the week since. Week 7, he was wide receiver 60. By week 8, week 9, wide receiver 45, and then he didn't play for a few weeks, and then wide receiver 61. So I think it's Jakobi Meyers. I think it's Brenton Strange. I do have Brian Thomas ranked a little bit higher than I'm comfortable with. In fact, I'm probably going to bump him down. But because of the matchup, it does feel like he's got an opportunity here. But I will put him below Khalil Shakir. So he's my wide receiver 26. It's a tough one, but I am going to go Zach Charbonnet here, McSauce. Because Brian Thomas just hasn't been able to put it together. Even the previous weeks, 7 targets and 5 targets, but just 3 for 31, 3 for 55, doesn't score the touchdowns. And we know Bashal Tutin is capable in the red zone as well. So that adds a different element here. Now, could Brian Thomas have a good game? Sure, it's possible. But I'm going to bank on Zach Charbonnet. Let's give you the numbers on Charbonnet here. Well, first, let me look at Walker just to provide some context. Yeah, Kenneth Walker, just 4 touchdowns on the ground on the season and just 1 in his last 3 games. But of course, he's getting the work on the ground. He's the main back there in Seattle. But we know that it's Zach Charbonnet anytime they get inside the 10-yard line. And what's Zach Charbonnet done in the last 4 games? He scored 3 touchdowns. In fact, on the season, 8 touchdowns on the ground for Zach Charbonnet, but he's also getting the work. This team is deciding to run the football. We're having a bit of and it's not discussed enough, but there's a bit of a run game renaissance that's happening here in the NFL with the better teams. We see Chicago, right? They're a dominant team who's winning games, and they're doing it largely with their run game, and they're doing it with 2 backs. Seattle, who we're talking about, they're doing it with 2 backs. Atlanta, if not for their QB situation, they were having a good run in the beginning of the season. But what do they have? They have 2 backs. Jacksonville, who's doing much better than they should be doing. They're doing it with 2 backs. New England Patriots, when they're healthy and integrated, I expect Ramondre Stevenson to be more involved this week, doing it with 2 backs. You got the workhorse, the guy who grinds it out between the 20s. You got the guy who comes in short down and distance. And both of those guys can be viable, especially if your team scores a lot of points and can move the football against Atlanta. I'm not scared. I'm rolling Zach Charbonnet pretty easily here, McSauce. I just can't trust Brian Thomas. Jordan Love, thank you. Appreciate you for stopping in here. Guys, if you have time, head over, use this QR code and head over to TikTok. We got Jesse Muller over there answering start sit questions for you. Get your question answered here. Go over there and see if you can get your question answered as well. Jesse, also a great fantasy mind, as you know. A couple of things here with about 20 minutes left. Let's move into our running backs and talk a little bit about some surprising rankings. Chase Brown at 5. Against Buffalo, we talked about how bad Buffalo is against the run. But we also got Samaje Perine all the way up at 31. So I think both of these running backs are viable once again this week. It does not scare me, to play both of them. Even if I have Joe Burrow ranked very highly. I have Jamar Chase ranked very highly where he deserves. I have T. Higgins ranked very highly. I just think this game is an absolute barn-burning shootout. James Cook is my RB1, for example. Josh Allen is my quarterback 1, for example. We got Dalton Kincaid ranked higher than I feel comfortable with this week at tight end 9, simply because we don't know how much he plays. The offenses should eat in this game. So Chase Brown all the way at 5, but Perine is flexible once again this week. Who else we got? We got Kyren Williams at 11. You need him to score a touchdown. Most of the times he does. Against Arizona, I'm not worried about him. RJ Harvey all the way up at 13. Ranked him highly this week or last week. We're going to go back to again. Jaleel McLaughlin getting more work than we like to see. But RJ Harvey against Vegas should absolutely eat. He's the guy there now. And it's nice to see him get that work. Jordan Mason at 19. I got to move him down because Aaron Jones will play this game. He was ranked that way because Aaron Jones was trending not to play against Washington. I want the guy who's going to catch passes. And Aaron Jones, even with his hamstring that got him out of the game early last week, I'm putting him all the way up. I'm going to put him ahead of Amari Hampton, but not ahead of Monungai. So he's going to be RB23. That's going to move Mason all the way down to RB33 territory. It's possible he's utilized against Washington a little bit more, but we just don't know exactly what's going to happen there. So that's kind of where I stand with running backs. And then, of course, you got the Tennessee guys down pretty far. Oh, Bam Knight, 24, RB24, even a tough game against the Rams. I think he gets most of the work. Michael Carter could be and should be utilized in the pass game, but I'm not scared off of Bam. But one thing to monitor, and actually let me check and see if we have an update on this with 20 minutes left to play. Are they the early game? They're the late game, so we may not. Evan Brown. This is the left guard for the Arizona Cardinals, the starting left guard, the Studley starting left guard. It doesn't say, but yesterday he did not practice for personal reasons. We don't necessarily know what those personal reasons are. We shouldn't necessarily know what they are, but we do know that he was questionable for this game. If he doesn't play, that does put a little bit of a dent in my confidence for Big Bam Knight and the rest of this offense. That's kind of a big blow, but especially against the Rams pass rush. But against the Rams, we know they're going to need to throw, and we know they're going to need to really keep up with this Rams offense. McSauce, appreciate you. Hey, good luck to you, man. I hope it works out. We do still need that Zach Charbonnet touchdown, of course, but I think you got a better chance of getting it than you do with Brian Thomas. So good luck to you, my man. Let's see. At wide receiver, a couple of interesting names as I decide whether or not to send Garrett Wilson away for Michael Wilson in a late first. I don't think I'm going to do it. I also got a GIF from the guy who sent it. So that's a Macho Man GIF that says, "You may not like it, but accept it." I don't think I can do that. I'm pretty stacked otherwise in this league and just made a deal for Jakobi Meyers to fill out my flex. So I don't need a Michael Wilson. I don't think I'll be doing that, but do like Michael Wilson this week and potentially going forward. I mean, with Jakobi Meyers slinging the rock, with MHJ not necessarily 100%, potentially for the rest of the year. Look, he's not going to be out the rest of the year, but we just don't know how this shakes out. Could be an interesting buy low moment for Michael Wilson, but that's not buying low. I'm going to send you Garrett Wilson for a late first and Michael Wilson. No, I'm going to keep my Wilson. You keep your Wilson. Let's see. Wide receivers. Michael Wilson, wide receiver 19. Troy Franklin, wide receiver 20, and Sutton, wide receiver 21. I have them both above T. Higgins, but that feels wrong. In fact, I'm going to move T up to wide receiver 19, and Wilson will be 20 in that tough matchup. And Zay Flowers still a back-end wide receiver 2. I think I'm fine with that, but I am going to sneak Khalil Shakir up to wide receiver 2 territory. He was my 25. He's now going to be my 22 against Cincinnati with who the heck knows, Jalen someone. I have it. I still have it up here. Jalen Davis at nickel corner. I could not even tell you who that is. I'm fairly knowledgeable when it comes to players on both sides of the football. I've never heard of that guy. So looks like he was drafted in 2020. I don't know. But yeah, this is the issue. In the middle of the field, this is where you can beat Cincinnati. So I'm going to bet on Khalil Shakir a little bit more than I feel comfortable with this week. At the top of the list, A.J. Brown, wide receiver 8. Got to stay in the flames with A.J. Brown getting the rock. Puka at wide receiver 7, but Devontae Adams, wide receiver 4. Got to love him there. We had George Pickens high, but not higher than CeeDee Lamb. Either way, Pickens disappointed big time. We had Jameson Williams all the way up at 10. That worked out pretty well. I'm on Ra, unfortunately. I don't think I had him ranked highly at all. He was a last-minute addition to playing, so that really hurt as well. Any other interesting wide receivers? Darnell Mooney all the way down at 42. I just don't trust him against Seattle. That was a question earlier. Quentin Johnston at 39. Devon Vele above both of them. And Romeo Dobbs, how the mighty have fallen down to 34. DJ Moore feels like he should be higher. I have him at 33. I can get him above Alec Pierce, I think. DJ Moore 31, Alec Pierce 32, Adonai Mitchell 33. Chris Godwin's an interesting case. I have him above all those guys at wide receiver 30. He's off the injury report. He looked good last week, had a bigger role. This is what we want to see out of Chris Godwin. I don't know what to expect here, especially with Baker reeling, especially with Tristan Wirfs out, like we talked about. So that is a concern there. And finally, the tight end position. All the tight ends apparently are going to be going off this week and every single week. In fact, I will pull this up just so we can take a look together at where my rankings lie. Add it to the stage, and let's go to the rankings here and share this tab instead. Trey McBride at 1, even in a tough matchup, he's still Trey McBride. He catches a touchdown a game, at least from Jacoby Myers. Play Trey McBride. Tyler Warren all the way up at 2. Brock Bowers in a tough matchup. Not the toughest matchup because Denver did get had last week on defense, both at wide receiver and tight end. Brock Bowers is him, and he's going to get plenty of targets. But I did move him down to 3 as a result. Tyler Warren, not in a great matchup, but he's just been so consistently good, and you don't want to pressure Jacksonville on the outside. They can be beaten over the middle. I think it's a Tyler Warren game. But in the same game, Brenton Strange at 4 against Indy. Yeah, I'm really comfortable with this. Look, I know Indy has the ability to cover tight ends. They have the ability to limit them, but their focus is going to need to be on these wide receivers. And I think Brenton Strange, that's where he gets by. And back-to-back tight end 5 finishes. He can get there on volume. He can get there on scoring a touchdown. Either way, I think the touchdown is imminent for Brenton Strange. And then Kyle Pitts in a really good matchup. Seattle gives it up everywhere except for Seattle limits you everywhere except for at the tight end position. This should be a feed Kyle Pitts game. Will it be? That remains to be seen. It's hard to trust him, but it's tough. It's tough not to play Kyle Pitts in this matchup. So he's my tight end 5. Now Mark Andrews staying in the flames again. Tight end 6. Lamar needs him. A great matchup against Pittsburgh. So I hopefully think that Pitts and Mark Andrews have good games. Appreciate you guys stopping by. We have about 12 minutes left until game time. Any and every start sit question, guys, throw it on in the chat and we will answer them as I kind of now remove Jordan Mason from my Scott Fishbowl lineup and replace him with Deebo Samuel. Yuck. But hey, you got to do what you got to do. Jordan Mason is out. I was hoping that that Aaron Jones would be out for my Jordan Mason shares. Not to be. That's quite all right. Aaron Jones, when healthy, gets the work. I will go Deebo over Jordan Mason. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me. Jamie's at the Browns game. Jamie, what is up? Freezing your ass off. Hopefully not as bad as last week. Proximity, what is up? Cortland Sutton or Buka full PPR? This question sucks because it's a good one, and I'm not completely sure what to tell you here. I think you got to go Sutton. I'm a little concerned. Again, this game back in week 10 in Denver was a 10-7 game. Denver won it, but I expect it to be a little close. I know Max Crosby is questionable. Pretty sure he'll play. I know the rest we don't know for sure because this game is a later game, but I got Cortland Sutton as a back-end wide receiver too. He's my wide receiver 23 on the week. So he's probably the guy that I want to go with. Emeka Egbuka, just to kind of be clear about this, let me pull up my sleeper app here so I can just get his exact stats for you. Against New Orleans, it's a pretty decent matchup. We're happy with this, and the target volume is there. In his last month since the bye, 13, 9, 8, 8, but targets were never what we've been concerned about with Emeka Egbuka the entire season. It's actually the production with those targets. Against New England, he went off wide receiver 4, 6 for 115 and 1, of course, against Christian Gonzalez. But Chris Godwin back. Chris Godwin looks like he's fully integrated. Baker's hurt, but Tristan Wirfs also hurt. So it's going to limit the downfield passing a little bit. Here's Emeka's last 3 games with 9, 8, and 8 targets, 5 for 40, 3 for 32, 4 for 42, and no touchdowns. I think Chris Godwin gets peppered with targets. I think Baker Mayfield is trying to keep it close to the vest. I think they rely on the run game in this game against New Orleans, which you can pass on New Orleans more so than you can run on them. I'm just concerned about him. So Cortland Sutton, I think, has the much better chance to catch a touchdown. And in fact, Emeka Egbuka, since week 6, has caught 1 touchdown. Who's going to catch the touchdown? I would bet on Sutton. Proximity, I'm going Sutton. Jamie's at the Brown game. He's freezing his booty off. That's a good one. Like that, except Booty is off this week. Booty's sitting at home with an 11-2 record as trades are going off in my leagues. And I'm trying to get Parker Washington out of my 2 lineups that I was hoping that he'd play for. Listen to this one. Omarion Hampton, Booty, and a 27 first for Jonathan Taylor. I'll take the package. Holy crap. That wasn't my deal, but it just came through in a league where I am contending heavily at 11-2. And I think the 3rd place, I'm in 2nd place. I think the 3rd place team just made that deal. That's a rough one. Proximity, what else you got? Yeah, it's a tough one, man. I get it. Against Vegas, I'm banking on the fact that it's going to be better than 10-7 this week. They are in Vegas, so Denver is going to have to pull out the stops. But RJ Harvey's a threat, man. I mean, J.K. Dobbins was fine. He was consistent on the ground, but RJ Harvey is a legit threat. And I think with Vegas being a little bit more hurt, look, the thing with Vegas is you cannot attack them in the middle of the field. It's Jeremy Chin. It's a Landon Roberts, who's fine. But it's that middle of the field is really tight for them, and you can't get past them. But if you have a little bit of time, you can attack them on the edges of the field. Their cornerback play is pretty poor. So that's where you go. You do not play tight ends against this team now. Denver doesn't play tight ends. It's Adam Troutman and it's Evan Ingram out there. They don't get utilized, but that's the thing, is that you want to bet on these outside receivers. They just didn't show up to play last time they played back in week 10. I'm going to bet on Sutton. Chip, what is up? Hampton or Shakir? This is a great question. I have Hampton. I think it was running back 22. It's 22 or 23. He's a back end RB2 for me this week. It's just week 1 integration. It's offensive line issues, but Jalen Carter is out. Even though they're playing Philly, you might be able to run up the middle on this Philly defense. So keep that in mind with Hampton. He's a decent play for sure. But I think with Herbert hobbled, with surgery happening to that non-throwing wrist this week, if he does play, which I think he will, he's pushing to play. If he does play, we're going to see kind of a focus on that run game. But then you have the Eagles defense pushing up. That's not good. So I think I'm going to lean Shakir here. I did just move Shakir up a couple of spots. He is my wide receiver 22 against Cincinnati. I just mentioned, I can do it again. I just mentioned the cornerback in Cincinnati. It is the nickel corner is Jalen Davis. I do not know who that is. But we got Dax Hill and DJ Turner, who have been playing phenomenally. But Geno Stone, he's fine. Jordan Battle, these guys are fine. I think Khalil Shakir, especially with Dalton Kincaid back, is going to be a little bit too much for them to deal with. I think he gets there on volume. Hampton is the better bet to score a touchdown, of course. But in PPR, I will play Shakir over Hampton this week. We love Hampton. He's been great, but with these offensive line issues, I'm not sure how it's going to shake out for him. Shakir over Hampton slightly. Let's see. Let's publish these rankings, make sure they get in. Any and every question you have in the last 5 minutes here, throw it in the chat as I do some good podcasting moves and triple check my lineups here to make sure that I win all the games that I need to win. Let's see. What are we doing here? We got a home league where I got Dalton Kincaid in over Jordan Addison in a fantastic matchup. Look, this is the week that JJ McCarthy needs to show something. Washington is abysmal in coverage. JJ, Justin Jefferson, and Jordan Addison are going to be wide open. JJ McCarthy needs to prove that he can get these guys the ball. and he's not going to be rushed a ton. That offensive line is good enough to handle the Washington pass D. And Aaron Jones is a little bit hobbled. So I think they're going to use him sporadically. I think they can lean on Jordan Mason a little bit in the run game, though I'm not banking on it, as we just talked about. And I will sit Jordan Mason down just because J.J. McCarthy hasn't shown me that he can consistently get the ball to these guys who are wide open, unless their name is Jalen Naylor. So, but we'll see. Washington, those guys should be wide open all game. But I will play Kincaid over Addison. Hopefully I don't regret it. Let's see. Other moves I want to make this week in terms of who I'm starting. We got Devon Vele. Yeah, over the likes of Tez Johnson and Terrence Ferguson. Yeah, it's rough with 4 teams on bye this late in the season. I know we're pushing for our playoffs, and some teams are decimated while other teams are feeling okay. We just got to make sure that it's all right for us. But with only 5 minutes left and no questions left, I'm going to cut it here and get to my lineups a couple minutes early. So I appreciate you tuning in. This has been the Fantasy Football Universe. We are here every single day live, certainly on TikTok, but also most days here on YouTube as well. Please follow along with us if you want to join in. If you appreciate this content, we appreciate you following us, liking the content, and showing up and helping you, which is our goal, to help you win your league. So thank you so much. Appreciate you. I am Jeremy, and we will see you next time.
If